Trial of cannabidiol for drug-resistant seizures in the Dravet syndrome. The Dravet syndrome is a catastrophic early-onset encephalopathic epilepsy with a high mortality rate, for which no anti-epileptic drugs have been approved in the United States.
In this study, we treated children with Dravet syndrome, which is a very serious genetic form of epilepsy that unfortunately has a very high seizure burden and a very high mortality from epilepsy. That these children who had not responded to often 5 or 10 other treatments were given cannabidiol or a placebo in addition to their existing medications. Cannabidiol is the major non-psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, also known as marijuana. So cannabidiol does not produce any high or psychoactive properties and therefore has less potential side effects, especially for use in children, than a psychoactive compound such as THC.
We were in the double-blind placebo-controlled phase of the study, and we did that for 14 weeks, and we were totally convinced that she was in placebo because her seizures didn't change at all. And then we were able to roll into the open label extension, and the second day that we were in open label and we knew that she was getting the actual drug, she went seizure-free, completely seizure-free for 2 months, which has never happened.
The main findings of the study were that there was a very statistically significant reduction in the convulsive seizure frequency in patients who were randomized to cannabidiol when compared to patients who were randomized to placebo. So the message is that cannabidiol does work in reducing convulsive seizures in children with Dravet syndrome. My hope for the future is that this study will lead to more similar studies to assess cannabidiol and perhaps products containing both cannabidiol and THC in various forms of epilepsy.
This randomized controlled trial showed that cannabidiol resulted in a greater reduction in convulsive seizure frequency than placebo among children and young adults with drug-resistant Dravet syndrome. Discussion. The findings in this trial suggest that the reduction in convulsive seizure frequency was meaningful as assessed by caregivers. The lack of a significant reduction in non-convulsive seizure frequency suggests that the anti-seizure effect of cannabidiol may be specific to convulsive seizures in the Dravet syndrome, or that the frequency of non-convulsive seizures cannot be reliably counted by parents in developmentally delayed children.
The online health website UPI released new information today on a purified oral version of a marijuana compound that could aid in treating resistant forms of epilepsy. According to 2 new clinical trials, scientists discovered that the compound, cannabidiol or CBD, helped reduce seizure frequency in children and adults with 2 hard-to-treat forms of epilepsy, Dravet syndrome and Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. The drug is still in the experimental phase, and doctors stress that it did not help everyone and is not a cure, but the results offer hope for those suffering with the condition.
Results. This trial showed that cannabidiol reduced the frequency of convulsive seizures among children and young adults with the Dravet syndrome over a 14-week period, but was associated with adverse events including somnolence and elevation of liver enzyme levels. Additional data are needed to determine the long-term efficacy and safety of cannabidiol for the Dravet syndrome.